All right. Hello, everyone. This is Adrian. I'm the Education and Community Liaison at the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society, and I'm welcoming you today for our January education session. We are welcoming Mark Watson from ABI Wellness. Hello, Mark. And
hey.
January tends to be the month where we kind of revisit what we're doing and make some new goals and try and change some things. So we thought this would be a great presentation to do. And the great thing about having these sessions over Zoom and recording them is that we can invite people from anywhere we want to. So Mark is coming to us from the mainland in Burnaby. And I will let him speak to you about a little bit about himself and what ABI Wellness is. So welcome, Mark.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk a little bit about, brain health and, possibilities for positive change. So it's my pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, hopefully you can see the screen here. Can we confirm that we've got that? Isn't technology amazing? Hey, can we see the screen?
Yep, everything's good.
There? Okay, perfect. Excellent. So the title of this is The New Path to Brain Injury Recovery. So my background, what kind of brought me to this work and really I say in service of this work, and I say that with intention, is my background is actually in special education. So I've worked in that sector most of my career. And my focus while working in special education was in working with kids with learning disabilities and adults with learning disabilities, and using curriculum that was focused on neuroplastic behavior, meaning the brain's ability to change itself. And that term is called neuroplasticity. And really the standard of care in special education is mostly compensatory when it comes to some of these kind of higher order cognitive functions. And it was really it was fun and quite innovative, the work that we were doing in special education. We had used a program called the Aerosmith program that was developed in Toronto in the late 70s by a true innovator in brain health, Barbara Aerosmith Young. And one of my mentors, Howard, he brought this program on large scale into Vancouver. And that's really what brought me into this kind of the world of brain injury and brain health. And in doing that work, it was quite innovative and new. And oftentimes, I'm a big visual person. It kind of felt like we were that red individual in that slide, in that you're doing something new and something kind of innovative. And at times, a little bit lonely, but also really exciting because you're almost carving that new pathway. And that's really what happens in neuroplasticity as well, is you're carving new pathways. And something that's said in neuroplasticity is neurons that fire together wire together. And that's actually really true. So, I feel, again, fortunate to be in service of this work for people with brain injury, but really even for organizations like yours that are doing such important work in the community, helping people to get access to the kind of services that they might need. I think it's just wonderful that organizations like Nanaimo Brain Injury Society are out there helping the community. As we may know, there's over 1.5 million Canadians that live with TBI, traumatic brain injury related disability. Of those, around half continue to be moderate to severely disabled 1 year post that injury. These are, very hard statistics to hear, but they're true. And when we look at that, that's really more in the TBI space. When we look at kind of head injuries and concussions, there are, really over 42,000 hospitalizations in BC from 2001 to 2010. And that's really a significant problem. And it's important to understand, and I'm sure in some of the other education series, I've had a chance to peek at some of them. We've covered really the definition of brain injury quite well. So we can understand that a concussion is a brain injury. It's called an MTBI. In our work, in my work, I actually work with two different organizations right now, and with one of them, the mission really brings us together. Is really helping to transform brain injury recovery by providing the kind of care that can really help people to have long-lasting benefits. When we look at the current standard of care for some people, for me, prior to my career, but personally, I had exposure to brain injury and concussion while in university, playing football. And I had suffered a couple of concussions while in university. And unlike what we might see in kind of with physical injuries, if you've ever kind of torn an ACL or done some kind of musculoskeletal damage, we go in, we see the doctor, we see the physiotherapist, we identify the problem, we get very clear, we kind of drill down to the area that we're concerned about, and then we load in a really functional plan. And for me, in studying biomechanics in university, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's very logical, it's very reasonable. But what can be challenging in brain injury is aligning not just the right kind of assessment, but then aligning the right kind of a treatment following that assessment in a way that is also functional. That can be a real challenge right now, as I think we all know. And this slide kind of talks to just how challenging it can be for everybody involved. We call those kind of silos, right? And sometimes it can be challenging to have each one of those silos communicating with each other. So yes, it's challenging for the clinician, it's challenging for the hospital, it's challenging for the lab and the pharmacy. But I really want to talk about the patient, the client, the person, the individual. It's really, really challenging for them and confusing and kind of overwhelming. And that's why, organizations like the NIMO Brain Injury Society are so important, is we want to be a voice and, a shoulder to lean on for those in our community that are struggling following that brain injury. This slide kind of talks a bit to some of the gaps in care. It can be quite challenging if we've had this injury, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or a stroke, or even maybe a neurological infection. We can go to the hospital. We can get the services that we need, that are probably the most important thing, is to get that kind of acute care help that we might need. But then it can be quite challenging when we get discharged back into community. I think most of us could kind of resonate with that, some of those challenges that are there. In rehabilitation, it can be really kind of labor intensive in terms of working with different professionals. Some of the outcomes, this is really zooming back out, looking at from a kind of a research and clinical perspective. Some of the outcomes can be quite varied. When you hear about mild traumatic brain injury or concussion, what helps to steer practice, and I think is very important, is literature and research. And mild traumatic brain injury is very challenging because even getting good assessment is very challenging, okay? And then there's also, because of that then relates to the next piece, which is the limited care and standardization. And then also throughout the process, it's hard to really track the participation, the engagement throughout that recovery process, which overall makes it quite challenging. So when we look at some of these brain injuries, these concussions, the current standard of care looks at, and it's great, uses occupational therapy, physical therapy. If we follow that kind of bottom part of this graph here, where we look at the kind of dotted line there. The current strategies are really helping some individuals in our community through one-to-one sessions with occupational therapists and physical therapists, and really deployment of strategies to help them. However, that care can actually be limited because, and the reason I know this is drawing back from my experience in the schools, was if there are higher order cognitive difficulties that are still present, it can stand in the way of one's ability to actually use the strategies in real life. Okay. And so when I look at some of the work that we're doing and interested in, when you deploy kind of neuroplastic strategy or methods along with compensatory strategies, the potential for a more fulfilled and independent person is there. And that's really exciting. And I think that's part of what we see in a lot of different medical fields at this time. When we look at deploying systems theory into solving complex problems, that is typically what's done, is finding a way to get the pieces to fit together in order to improve those outcomes and really increase the efficiency for the patient, the client, and the rehabilitation professional. Is this all making sense so far? Are we catching on? I hope I'm explaining this well, because I really want to be of service. And when I started getting involved with this work, I felt really, really fortunate to be a part of it, because for us, it actually started with a question. And when I had the opportunity to get involved with this work, remember I was coming from special education. And when I had the opportunity to get more involved, I was with the team. So one of my mentors, Howard Eaton, who started the Aerosmith schools, and Barbara Aerosmith Young, who created this Aerosmith program. Over the years, we had individuals with traumatic brain injury and acquired brain injury that had these higher order, this front part of the brain here is called the prefrontal cortex. It's kind of like the CEO of the brain, and it's where your attention, your memory, all your higher order kind of reasoning and processing is kind of located out of there. And for many people with learning disabilities, but also with brain injury, there can be some sustained challenges in those executive functions. And the standard of care, sadly, at that time, and still a lot that way at this time, is deploying these compensatory strategies. And the question that we kind of had was, if we utilize some of these exercises, these cognitive exercises that we were using in education with people with similar symptom presentation with brain injury, could we see an effect? Okay, could we see a change? And that was really the big kind of moment for us. Was we approached a really good team of researchers at a local university, and the question was, can people that are post-acute, okay, and have these cognitive symptoms following brain injury, could they engage in a program aimed at helping them to improve their executive functions and higher order cognitive functions, and understand what the effect of that could be? And I think, a lot of, I felt fortunate to be a part of the team asking this sort of a research question. And the team at the university said, yeah, that's an interesting research question. Let's see if people could show up and engage. And to their credit, they ran a study, and the first graph that we see here, that's so nice and colorful, is really showing us that yes, the brain can change throughout a lifetime. And I think that's just wonderful for us all listening here to know. Okay, the brain has a remarkable capacity for change. Okay, neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change is a fact. Okay, and one of the terms, I hear neuroplasticity a lot. It's kind of a big word, but someone else, David Eagleman I believe he's out of Stanford, utilizes a term called live wired. I kind of like that. So live wired means it's live. Your brain can change. It's kind of changing all the time. And we're going to talk about some really practical ways to do that and to embed that into our daily living in a moment here. But what this graph shows here in study 1, okay, is some of the changes that people had that engaged in these programs, okay? And if we look at, this was all people with chronic TBI following 3 months of the cognitive program I'm talking about. And the blue little graph there is what we call kind of baseline for people with traumatic brain injury. Okay, that's kind of their levels. If we look at the numbers, the corresponding numbers along the side there, that kind of shows their initial rating with the blue. And then the kind of mustardy color is the 3-month mark. Okay, and then what the kind of orangish color is there is called a control. And what a control is just that's somebody who participated that doesn't have an insult or injury and is a comparison group basically. Okay, and what we saw in fluid intelligence, and this is what gives us so much encouragement, is fluid intelligence means your ability to kind of think on your feet. Okay, your ability to think in real time. Okay, crystallized intelligence means like facts. Name all the capitals and all the provinces in Canada. That would be more crystallized. Whereas fluid is kind of thinking on our feet and ever changing, and it's really a reflection of higher order kind of cognition. And what we saw at the 3-month mark, as you can see there, that's our mustardy color, is a pretty significant change from the baseline, the blue. So that's really good to see. And then we didn't see much change in the crystallized, which we wouldn't expect to see. But the last measure that we're talking about there is called executive frontal. And what we were using there is something called EEG. And that's those caps you see that looks at kind of electrical activity and connections in the brain. And what we were seeing from the blue, again, our baseline, before the program started, and then at the mustardy, was better kind of functional connectivity. And what that means is just a better kind of organization of connections. And then when you link that with an improvement in fluid, you're saying, we're seeing some change here for this population. And that's really, really exciting and promising. Now, keeping in mind, this is pilot data, early data, but still exciting to see. The second study was looking at the interdisciplinary program. That's what I want to hit on later. I think we've all heard exercise is good for the brain, and it's so true. We've heard that mindfulness is good for the brain. It's so true. We've heard that cognitive training may be good for the brain if dosed appropriately and the right program. And I think that can be true too. But I think it can be challenging because all of us only have so much time. We have to find ways to integrate things in a way that makes sense. So this second study was looking at the integrated approach of exercise, of mindfulness, of cognitive rehabilitation, all inside of one program. And what was interesting to see there was, we saw improvements in short-term auditory verbal memory, the rate of learning and retention, but also we were looking at mental health in this as well. And we also saw significant brain network reorganization and reductions in both anxiety and depression. And I think that's wonderful to see. So this slide here is really, it's a hard one to hear because I think sometimes in health and in wellness, a lot of us, I want to lose a few pounds. I just want a pill to do it for me, please. That would be nice. I want this habit to change. Why wouldn't it just change? Like, could it just please just change? So, this is a reminder that, sadly, the silver bullet doesn't really work, unfortunately. And, the hypothesis that, I think our team is looking at and I'm looking at is really, how does one take small steps to lead to bigger change? And, I think it's really important to to know that one can change. Deploying some exercise is possible for all of us. And I think one of the terms I really liked, it's a phrase that I hear is, Rome wasn't built in a day, but bricks were laid every hour. So kind of each kind of step towards positive change starts with one step. And I think, organizations like the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society are there to help you along that way, along that pathway, because it can be hard, it can be challenging, but it is possible to make some of those changes. I'm not really going to hit too much on that. By deploying the kind of, exercises and systems, things can change, in the standard of care with a lot of kind of return to work type programs. These are utilizing a lot of really good things, but on the cognitive side are not really looking at, neuroplastic or live wired type programs that are challenging the actual cognitive functions. Therefore, it's kind of limiting some of the sustained return to work. What I really want to draw our attention to here is, ultimately what matters is in one's life is the quality of life that you're living. So if you've ever been a person that's struggled with any kind of health condition, even though they may do CT scans and, sometimes PET scans and blood work and all of this kind of stuff, ultimately what will tend to matter, or what may matter, is how are you feeling today out of 10? When we started, you were a 4. Right now, where are you at? Because that will give us a good indication as to how you're perceiving the quality of your life. And something that I've been involved with in serving this community of people with acquired brain injury is really looking at quality of life. And it's really wonderful to see when people really engage in programs that are targeted at helping them to take ownership, whether it's movement, whether it's learning mindfulness with a coach, whether it's maybe doing yoga, whether it's socializing with a new group. If we can look towards trying to understand and measure that and build those habits out, get maybe 1% better each day, or 1% more engaged each day, things can change. Okay, there is a reason to feel a little bit optimistic here. Things can get better. Okay, and that's, again, gives me great hope and optimism because of organizations like the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society that are out there and available, looking to support those in our community that are looking to live a little bit higher quality of life. For me, obviously, I work in this space. I love it. I feel so fortunate because I've had so many mentors that have helped me. But really, for me, this work is all about people, and people helping themselves and maybe reclaiming, some of what has been lost, as we're thinking really specific to brain injury. In this picture, these are all real people that I've worked with and inspire me. And I've met some brilliant doctors, brilliant professionals, but it's really those clients that continue to teach me so much about what is possible. And the last thing I kind of want to share is just, and this is actually a word that the woman in the middle of this picture, who is right there, her name is Mary Ev, and she took part in one of our programs that we have, and when she went through a very specific rehabilitation program that we developed for her and with her. And at the end of the day, we asked her, what did this do for you? And she said, well, I'm not the same Mary Ev as I was before. And I'm kind of going, okay, but I'll tell you what, I've reclaimed a lot back that previously this injury took from me. And I think that's a really powerful word. So I wish you all the best out there, understanding that, there are some very good resources out there. for people with brain injury. There are some great resources on the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society website. There are some very good applications out there. You can see here I'm wearing like a Fitbit type app tracker. I think one has to try to be a little bit cognizant and careful to compare yourselves to everybody else. Really just compare yourself to you yesterday. And if we're getting just that little tiny bit better, or even being self-compassionate if we didn't quite get there, that's okay. We still have the opportunity to get a little bit better. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's a great reminder. I know that this is kind of the season where everyone's like changing everything and, not necessarily always making the goals realistic and not looking at the small stuff because they're focused on the big stuff. So it's a nice reminder to, to just give yourself credit for everything you do every day. But yeah, if you want to learn more about ABI Wellness, go check out your website, which is abiwellness.com, or is it
You got it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and yeah, feel free to come check out the Nanaimo Brain Injury Society website, www.nbis.ca. I want to thank Mark for joining us this morning, and I'm going to hold you to it and invite you back to get some more information from what you've learned and what you're doing over in Burnaby. And yeah, that's it for today, but we will see you on the next one. See you later.
Wonderful. Thank you.